There's a very important question to be asked. But first there's that old story about the monk called Ado. He'd been in the monastery for several decades, and he was a gentle giant of a man. But their country was at war, so messengers were sent out to conscript able-bodied men into the army. And so the messengers came to the monastery, and when they saw the stature of Ado, he was immediately taken to become part of that army. But he went to his abbot in great despair. He said to his abbot, "I'm a Buddhist and have practiced non-himsa, non-hurting. What am I to do?" And the abbot said, "It is your duty. Go and do your duty." So Ado donned the armor of a soldier and went to war. He gave as much dedication to being a soldier as he did to being a monk, and he became a fighting machine, lauded for his prowess, his fearlessness, his bravery. When the war was over, he went back to the monastery, and when he was in front of the abbot, bowing his head, he said, "I am no longer worthy. I am sullied." And the abbot said, "It was your duty to be a soldier. Now it is your duty to be a monk. Take off that ridiculous armor and come to the meditation hall." And then there's that Sufi story about the young man who was under the tutelage of a great Sufi master, and he came to the stage when his Sufi master told him that he must go and hone his sensory awareness. And so he went off into the forest, because we well know that to turn inward is to allow our senses to become heightened. And so he sat in the forest in contemplation, and he became addicted to this practice. And so he did not hear the subtle call of his master to return. He remained seated, following his practices assiduously, basking in his sensory awareness. But then one day, there was a shrill and piercing sound, and he looked up and saw a bird. He said, "How dare that bird interrupt the contemplation of a dervish?" And with that, the bird fell down at his feet, dead. So he thought to himself, "Oh, I must have attained a great degree. I must now be an adept." So he got up from his contemplations and went off, but he was soon, of course, in need of food, and he saw a great house. So he went and knocked on the door, and when the door was opened by an old woman, he said, "Woman, Bring an honorable dervish food. And so the woman said, certainly, great sage, as soon as I can. So she went off. But she was gone for some long while, and the dervish became angry. So when she came back, he said, how dare you keep a venerable dervish waiting? And the old woman said, I am not a bird that drops dead in the forest. So the dervish was greatly surprised. And he said, how come you do not react to my anger and can read my mind? And the old woman said, I have been under the tutelage of a master, and he taught me obedience. When I was called to be in his presence and listen to his dissertations, I came. I have not heard from him for some years, but the powers that I have come unbidden from what he has taught me. So the dervish said, oh, please, please, will you take me on as your student? The old woman said, if you cannot obey your master, how will you obey me? So, quite chastened, the dervish went back to his master. But the master immediately said to him, go and come under the tutelage of a certain garbage collector in such and such a city. And so the dervish went off to obey. But when he arrived there and saw the state of this garbage collector, filthy, smelling, he was repelled, and he turned to leave. The garbage collector shouted after him, calling him by name, Leisurewood, Leisurewood, what bird in the forest have you killed today? What woman have you met who can read your mind? So the dervish was greatly shocked, and he said, how have you these powers? And the garbage collector said, these powers, although hidden, come unbidden, because I have fulfilled my duty. But your duty is to a this or a that. What your master is teaching you is duty, you fool, duty. After this, the dervish came under the tutelage of the garbage collector and became in due time a great Sufi sheikh. According to the Sufi tradition and many of the other great faiths, the last phase before God realization, nirvana, liberation, according to the Sufis, is called khidmat, service. Service to God, service to the divine, service to life. So the question that's posed now from these stories, what for you is the difference between service and duty? From your experience, what is the difference between service and duty?
Duty seems to have something attached to it, like an outside perception, I think. The service is something that you do from yourself, I guess. Duty, yeah, to me duty is, it's like family expectation or social expectation.
Right.
Some, when they're doing their duty, don't think they're doing service. And others, when they're doing service, think that service is a particular kind of thing, a particular kind of way, it looks a particular way. Whereas service isn't necessarily have a look at all. Service is just adding value to people and making sure people are good, whatever that is. Whether they're a garbage collector, whether it's whatever. And to do your duty is often you have to figure out what your duty is, and often trying to duty down, you just never do it. And it's interesting thing to figure out. Yeah. So sometimes duty is something that you're willing to do and you're really happy to do. Other times duty you just don't want to do it because you have to.
It's a very, very pointed question. Just like was said now, the need for us to dive deep, very deep.
I've noticed within myself that what duty can look like, because I've noticed in sometimes I have a feeling I need to go in a particular direction, that I decided I want to go in that direction, so I go in another direction. But in going in another direction, I'm pulled back to that direction. I constantly get pulled back no matter what I'm doing, even if I don't want to. And I remember that happened to me once, and then I realised I had to go down that path and I had to figure it out in my mind, that I had to accept that and then I had to enjoy it and then go there. Otherwise, I wasn't going to get anywhere.
Right. So what is duty?
For me, duty is like a forced thing from outside, like a job.
Right.
And service is like a worship that you do it with your free will.
Okay.
To me, duty is part of the mind, and whereas service comes definitely from the heart.
Okay.
There is a difference between the two. You have a duty to do certain things. Your heart can change that. That's how I feel about it.
Okay.